sometimes it's 6 p.m., and I just don't feel like cooking whatever's on my meal plan. So to avoid running out to Chipotle again, I have kept a stash of freezer meals in my freezer to solve that problem. If you are like me, I've got 10 tips for how to make freezer meals for your Instant Pot that will solve that running out to restaurants and busting your eating out budget once and for all. Hey guys, I'm Jen. I am the creator of Modern Frugality, and if you have seen my videos before, you know that I am a self-proclaimed horrible cook. I hate doing dishes. I don't really find enjoyment in cooking. So restaurants and quick service and fast food are always places in my budget that I tend to go overboard on. I love meal planning. I've made a ton of meal planning videos and articles over the years because I'm a planner and I love planning. But when it gets down to it, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, it's 6 p.m., and sometimes I just don't feel like executing the meal plan and the meal prep that I have put the effort into making. I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes I just don't feel like it. So in that moment, I know that I can turn to one of the freezer meals that I keep on hand that doesn't have to be completely thawed. I can just microwave it for a minute and jiggle it into the Instant Pot, and dinner's on the table in less than an hour. And I don't have to spend that money going to Chipotle or Taco Bell. Any other taco restaurant basically is kind of where you can find me. But I don't have to do that with my freezer meals. So if you are similar, then I am going to share my top 10 tips I have learned over the years to get the best results from freezer meals. Because in the past 5 years, I think I've made every freezer meal under the sun. I've read all the articles, I've watched all the videos, and I've done them really well and I've done them really horribly. So I'm making a video specifically on Instant Pot freezer meals because I found those to be the absolute best. They're way easier than defrosting something and putting it in the oven. That's the type of freezer meal you kind of have to plan ahead for. And usually freezer meals are my savior from going out to eat at the last minute. So I can't rely on something that I have to defrost. And so that leaves out the slow cooker if there's any raw meat in it, because you can't put frozen meat in a slow cooker because that time between when it defrosts and it cooks, that's a really dangerous time and it can go like rancid. So that leaves slow cookers out, that leaves ovens out. But with an Instant Pot, you can defrost something really quickly by either microwaving it for 1 or 2 minutes or putting it in some hot water. And you just have to defrost it enough to wiggle it out of whatever container it's in. Usually I use a gallon plastic bag. And then you cook it for as long as the Instant Pot says you should for the type of meat or bean or whatever that you're using. So I have a list of 31 really great recipes to freeze for the Instant Pot. They're not all freezer recipes. Some I've added a few caveats in order to make them freezer friendly, but they're all really great. We got some healthy ones, some Whole30, some vegetarian, some comfort food. So I'll put the link in the description so you can get all 31. But right here, I'm just going to give you the tips on how to turn any Instant Pot recipe into a really great freezer recipe and save yourself some time and money. The first tip is to batch prep 4 to 6 meals at a time. So you don't want to go crazy and do 31 meals, but really there's no point in just doing one. So get your ingredients together, get similar ingredients, and make 4 to 6 at a time. It depends on how often you're going to use them. If you're someone like me and you're using a freezer meal at least once a week, then make 6. If this is really something that's just a backup for you, then make 4, because you don't want to leave these freezer meals in the freezer for longer than 3 months. You want to make sure whatever you make, you're using within 3 months. So If it's gotten to the point where these things have been in there for 3 months, you still haven't used them, then that's the time to start putting them on the meal plan. Second tip is to batch based on your protein. So there are 2 ways to go about this. You can either get a really great deal on some bulk meat. I know that's really common in rural areas. You can go in on an entire animal and split it between houses. Or if you're just in a place, Costco, Sam's Club, whatever bulk place you shop at, and there's a really great deal on some kind of meat, then get that. And then you're going to end up freezing some of it anyway. So just make freezer meals in advance. You can freeze some for individual ingredient stuff, and then just make 4 to 6 freezer meals with what you have. Alternatively, if that doesn't happen to you, it doesn't really happen to me, I will just buy like a 5 or 10 pound bag of frozen chicken and then divvy it up between 4 to 6 freezer meals. Chicken's already frozen. It's more affordable to buy it in bigger bags. So that is how I will go about it. Instead of doing like a shrimp freezer meal and a beef freezer meal and a chicken freezer meal, like that's going to be a lot of money up front, and you're not really getting any savings on the actual protein. So look for ways that you can get the lowest cost as possible on the protein, and let that be the deciding factor in what kind of freezer meals you make, because typically meats are the most expensive part of a freezer meal. So that's what you want to base your recipes around, is the best deal you can get on that. And tip 3, if there are no stellar deals on those bulk fresh meats, always go frozen for everything, not just meat. But if there's anything frozen you can buy for your freezer meal, go with that, because it's already frozen. Frozen is typically cheaper than fresh. So to me, it just doesn't make sense for me to buy all this nice fresh meat and fresh produce just for a freezer meal. Tip 4 is actually to leave out the veggies. So you can add frozen veggies or fresh veggies to a meal, but you have to do it with some discernment. So if you have a frozen chicken freezer meal, then go ahead, add some veggies to that are going bad. That's kind of what I do to use up my veggies that I know I'm not going to be able to cook immediately, but I still want to use. I'll incorporate them into the freezer meal. No matter what the recipe says, I'll find a place to use those veggies so they don't go bad. But if you have a meat that's going to take about an hour in the Instant Pot, you're not going to want to put a veggie in that freezer meal that's going to be cooked in 5-10 minutes. That's just going to come out really mushy and not appetizing. So for meats that take longer in the Instant Pot, leave out the veggies. It's much easier to, whenever comes time to cook it, add a frozen veggie or a fresh veggie at that time. 5 is to don't freeze shelf-stable products. There's just no point. These things you always have on hand, they're not going bad, and a lot of the times they take different cooking times than what you're freezing. So one of the big ones is pasta. Pasta recooked from frozen is disgusting. Don't cook pasta and then put it in there. Same with dry pasta. Don't put dry pasta in your freezer meal. There's just no point. And so same goes with like dry beans and legumes. Just leave them out, and on the bag you can write like add 1 cup black beans or whatever. Now, if the bean is already cooked, like a canned bean, I will put that into the freezer bag. For me, it saves space. If it's in the freezer bag with the freezer meal, then I have more room in my pantry for other things. So that's kind of what I do it. But again, beans, canned beans, pretty shelf stable, so you don't even need to do that. You can just add them in at the end of the meal. It really comes down to palate preference. 6 is to use freezer bags. So you can either use reusable bags. There are a lot of affordable options for freezer bags now, where like several years ago there wasn't. Like Ziploc really was your only option if you wanted to do this to save money. So I will link to one in the comments, and you can see a few in the article if you click to my blog. So you can go that route, or you can go Ziploc or any other type of disposable plastic bag. You want to select the freezer safe one. It's going to keep your freezer meal fresher for longer. And more importantly, freezer bags are a little more durable than regular ones. So that's going to keep you safe in the period of time where your freezer meal is not frozen. You really want all that liquid and meat to stay in the bag, not get punctured, like no holes or anything. So you want the best quality bag possible. And so that is either your reusable freezer bag or your freezer version of whatever disposable plastic bag you use. 7 is to defrost overnight if you can, or to quick defrost. So you need to be able to put the meal into the Instant Pot, and unfortunately, gallon-sized bags are not the same size as Instant Pot bowls. So you have to defrost it a little bit, but one of the best things about freezer meals is that you can do them last minute. So what I do is I will put it in some warm water and defrost it that way, just for maybe, like, it depends on the size of the bag, but 5, 10, 20 minutes or something if I forget about it. Or if your microwave is big enough to fit a gallon-sized bag that's either been like flattened or whatever, then you can stick it in the microwave for 1 or 2 minutes. It's not going to affect the bag. It's not going to affect the contents. It's literally just going to loosen it up enough to get it out of the bag. So if you have a low wattage microwave, 2 minutes. If it's really high, then 1 minute is fine. 8 is if your meal needs more liquid in the Instant Pot, use that bag and put a little water in it, shake it up a little, and then pour that water into the Instant Pot. So normally I make sure when I put my meals in the gallon bag that there is at least a cup of liquid, so I don't have to worry about that. But if it's just looking kind of dry, then definitely put water in there, because you don't want to get that burn notice from your Instant Pot. So better safe than sorry. So instead of just adding some water, you can you can add a little bit of stock too if you have some stock around, but use the extra sauce from that bag. You're going to be squeezing it out to get every last bit, but you're not going to get everything. So just put a little water in there, shimmy it around, and then pour it in there, and you should be golden. 9 is to use a cornstarch slurry. So I use this on almost every Instant Pot meal I use because they always tend to turn out a little more watery than I'd like them. So what I will do is I will take the meat out if I can, and then I will put a cornstarch slurry into the liquid to thicken it up. So you're going to use a tablespoon of cornstarch for every cup of liquid that's in there. So usually I'll use about a tablespoon of cornstarch because I try to keep it at 1 cup. But that would be a tablespoon of cornstarch and a tablespoon of cold water all mixed up, and that is a cornstarch slurry. And then I'll put it on saute and pour that in, and then just mix it up, let it bubble, and that thickens up the sauce that's in there. And so instead of just having like a watery mess and losing out on all the flavor that's in it, you've then just made a sauce, a really great sauce. So that is a little tip if you're like me and you don't like to do just soups or chilies in your Instant Pot. And then the last tip is don't freeze your meal alone. You can save a lot of money by obviously making 3 freezer meals with all the same ingredients, but you may not want to eat chicken curry 3 times in a row. So If you partner with like 1 or 2 other people and you each make 3 of the same freezer meal, you can exchange them, and then you've saved money on the ingredients, you've reduced the food waste, and then you've also got the variety by sharing. So obviously you want to make sure like you're all using a similar protein. One person's not like giving you, New York strips and you've got like frozen chicken. So make sure you all agree on what the recipe is, use similar proteins, but this is a really great way to just save a little extra money. And then also you're forming this like fun little group with your friends where you can like exchange freezer meals. And yeah, you can do, 1 recipe or 2 or 3, whatever is manageable for you at that point. But it's more fun to do things with friends. So again, if you are ready to dive into some freezer meals, definitely check out my list of 31 great, easy Instant Pot freezer meals. And also check out this video over here where I talk about how to save money on groceries so that you can spend as little on your freezer meal ingredients as possible. And I will see you next time.